Hello everyone, GoldenNova here. Cyberstorm Access is looking like an outstanding set so far to round out the year, and a big part of that comes from some pretty wacky pieces of legacy support. We've got a lot of archetypes to focus on this time around, and somehow, Konami managed to update 2 archetypes at the same time. See, the Duel Terminal lore is vast, covering many eras and casts of characters, and sometimes these elements come together in some pretty neat ways. Where once the Constellars rose up to fight against the corrupting forces of the Lswarms, their descendants, the Teller Knights, arrived to combat the sinister shadow games of the Shaddolls. And now, a new wave of support has arrived that seeks to combine the two themes into one, or at the very least can work with either of them, kinda like what the Raiders cards did for Phantom Knights and Raid Raptors. Now, covering them all in one video would be a daunting task to say the least, so we'll be covering them in 2 separate videos, starting with Constellars, which effectively premiered in the 2013 side set Hidden Arsenal 7, Night of Stars. They, weren't very subtle about their arrival, and we're certainly not going to start being subtle now. So let's count up all the stars in the sky, see what the astral signs have in store for us, then find some allies to help us connect the dots. It's time to horoscope out the competition with Constellars. Point of order concerning all the new combo Constellar Knight cards coming out, how am I gonna split those up? Well, my rule of thumb here is, if a card supports or mentions both archetypes, they'll be going in the Teller Knight video next week, a decision that's only mostly motivated by wanting to make absolutely sure I don't miss any reveals from Cyberstorm Access. So, with that out of the way, what is the deal with Constellars? Well, they're a series of light monsters of various types that have a big focus on swarming the field to accomplish Xyz summons. Yeah, big shocker, the Xyz era archetype likes to Xyz summon, how original. Well, in this case, the deck was primarily focused on expanding the range of ranks it could support by incorporating a bunch of levels. Most decks lock themselves into a particular level for consistency purposes, but with a little bit of level modulation, these celestial savants make it work, and because of that, have had some of the most powerful Xyz monsters ever printed. Let's kick things off with Constellar Xyz, a level 1 fairy monster with 100 attack and 1600 defense. If your opponent controls a monster and you control no monsters, you can special summon this card from your hand. And once per turn, you can target a Constellar monster you control or is in your grave, and this card's level becomes the current level of that monster. However, Xyz can't be used as Xyz material except for the summon of a Constellar Xyz monster, which, for the time, was understandable. A free summon that could mimic any relevant level would have been a tad too powerful, though nowadays that kind of restriction is pretty laughable, especially because it's got the Cyber Dragon style of special summoning instead of the objectively better Photon Thrasher style. Despite all my belly aching though, Xyz still performs an important role, insofar that it makes sure you have the right levels to pair with your other monsters to make your flagship Xyz, helping you to take your strategy and Xyz through to the end. Constellar Xyz is a level 2 spellcaster monster with 900 attack and 100 defense, and you contribute this card to special summon a Constellar monster from your hand or grave in face-up defense position, except a copy of itself. And thank goodness, because the one restriction it does not have is a once per turn clause, so this could have looped you infinitely. But it does mean that the more you have, the more you can use. Xyz fills a similar role to Xyz insofar as it wants to help you assemble monsters of the right level on board. And while you're not able to special this one for free, it does have the benefit of triggering any on-special summon effects, which is quite nice. They're probably one of the most helpful members of our staff. Now, these next 4 I'm going to cover all at once because they all have a very similar vibe. Constellar Aldebaran is a level 3 Beast Warrior monster with 1300 attack and 800 defense, and when normal summoned, you can special summon a level 3 Constellar monster from your hand. Constellar Algieti is a level 4 Spellcaster monster with 1600 attack and 1400 defense that has the exact same effect, except it summons level 4 Constellars from your hand. Constellar Virgo is a level 5 Fairy monster with 2300 attack and 1600 defense that special summons a level 5 Constellar from your hand when normal summoned, though this time in face-up defense position. And Constellar Alresha is a level 6 warrior monster with 2200 attack and 1200 defense, and special summons any Constellar monster from your hand in face-up defense position. These 4 form a cycle of monsters meant to turbo out certain ranks of Xyz monsters, except Alresha, which can help summon anything for some reason, but I guess once you reach level 6, you get to bend the rules a little. This does line up with the ranks of the Constellar Xyz monsters that we have, but because they don't apply any kind of lock, you could have them branch out into any number of Xyz. The problem is, because they don't summon from a more broad resource base like the grave or deck, you need to have the right combination of cards in hand to make this work, and that goes double for Virgo and Alresha, because you also need to have the requisite tribute fodder on top of that. Now, that's not to say any of them individually can't be good. If you build your deck around any one of them, you can mitigate the consistency issues. But if you try running all of them, well, you know what they say, two's company, but three's a crowd. You might end up biting off 4 than you can chew. You might end up breaking out in 5s. In fact, you might end up running into so many mismatched hands, you'll be absolutely sick of seeing them. I'm here all week, folks. Constellar Leonis is a level 3 beast monster with 1000 attack and 1800 defense, and during your main phase you can normal summon a Constellar monster in addition to your normal summon or set. This is another card that helps put your material on board, but does so by granting you extra normal summons. It's a bit more flexible than Aldebaran since you can normal summon any Constellar, not just special summon a level 3 from hand, but those 2 effects do stack. So if you used Aldebaran to special summon Leonis, you'd have the materials for a rank 3 and a spare normal summon so long as you use it before the overlay. Now, with that being said, can someone please clip those laser nails before they get too long? Leonis is clawing up all the star furniture! Constellar Sheraton is a level 3 beast monster with 700 attack and 1900 defense, and when normal summoned, you can add a Constellar monster from your deck to your hand. Yeah, it's just a Stratos, with the small caveat that it only activates on normal summon, so no special summon shenanigans here. Still, it lets you set up future plays, and can even grab some pretty strong monsters from newer releases, so it's got some merit to it. Also, I love that Sheraton looks like a little gremlin that found a gun, and thinks that makes it look threatening. What a charming little goblin warrior. Constellar Accubens is a level 4 machine monster with 800 attack and 2000 defense, and when this card is normal or special summoned, all Constellar monsters you currently control gain 500 attack permanently. This one is kind of hit or miss for me. Like, if you normal summon Algietes and use their effect to summon Accubens, then yeah, you get a total of 1000 extra attack points to work with, and if you're making an offensive push with those 2 monsters, that's great. But generally, you're using these monsters as material to make an Xyz, and once you do that, the bonus is effectively gone. However, if you do all that, but already have an Xyz boss on board that's going to keep that bonus, well, now we're talking. 500 is not an insignificant amount, and can turn even some mid-monsters into real threats. That's just the benefits of being a little crabby. Constellar Caduceus is a level 4 spellcaster monster with 1600 attack and 1550 defense. If you control a Constellar monster except a copy of itself, you can special summon this card from your hand, and during your main phase, you can add a Constellar Speller Trap card from your deck to your hand. On top of that, a Constellar Xyz monster that has this card as material gains this effect. If it battles a light or dark monster before damage calculation, banish that monster. Well, that's just a dandy bit of support, isn't it? You get a free level 4 on board, a piece of support for your troubles, and any on-theme Xyz that has this tucked under them becomes an El Shaddai construct for any light or dark monster it battles, except it's even better because this just banishes. It doesn't have the flexibility to work with your other levels without some outside help, but you know what? They can make do. For those of you not in the know, this is a more recent version of Rosselhaig, and between being turned into an Evilswarm, a Shaddai, and a Zephyra, I think they've deserved to kick back a bit and let the others do all that level modulation work, huh? Constellar Chaos is a level 4 Beast Warrior monster with 1800 attack and 700 defense that can't be used as synchro material. Up to twice per turn, you can target a Constellar monster on the field, then activate one of these effects. Increase its level by 1, or reduce its level by 1. This makes Chaos one of the best monsters in the deck in terms of facilitating Xyz summons. For instance, if they're next to a level 4, you can certainly fold them both into a rank 4 no problem. Or you could use the increase on both of them one time to make a rank 5. If you have a level 6 monster, cows can use the level boost on themselves twice, and voila, it's a match. And would you believe it, they even made it a Beast Warrior so you can search it with Tenki. It may not do anything flashy, but I don't think you'll ever be Sag to see this Sagittarius. Constellar Pollux is a level 4 warrior monster with 1700 attack and 600 defense, and during the turn this card is normal summoned, you can normal summon a Constellar monster in addition to your normal summon. Now, this sounds a lot like Leonis, the trade-off here being that you're getting rid of Leonis' ability to use this every turn and have it not be predicated on a normal summon for what amounts to a better level. 4 is king after all, but it does mean you can get a little mismatched if you don't have a level 4 to go with it that turn. Still, despite the drawbacks, it's still more than enough to be an excellent addition to the team, but maybe not so much to the arsenal. I don't think swords work very well when you put them together like that. I know it's on brand for you as the Gemini one, but come on. Constellar Sombre is a level 4 fairy monster with 1550 attack and 1600 defense, and while this card is in the grave, if it was sent there this turn, you can normal summon a Constellar monster for 1 less tribute, something that's going to be very relevant in just a bit. You can banish a Constellar monster from your grave, then target a Constellar monster in your grave and add that target to your hand. Also, this card gains the following effect: this turn, you can activate this effect, normal summon a Constellar monster. Okay, a lot of good things to talk about here. Our level 5s and 6s become much more usable with this around. It's also nutty in terms of grave recursion, essentially tossing out one Constellar to get a second one another chance. And if that wasn't enough, it comes with a whole extra normal summon that's part of an effect, meaning it actually stacks with either Leonis or Pollux, as those don't stack with each other. The game very rarely allows you to stack multiple extra normal summons that can be used as part of your game actions. But if it's part of an effect, like how Floowandereeze do it, there is no limit. Sombre is easily one of the most important Constellars in our roster, but when you hold the power of Sophia, Goddess of Creation, as well as a majority of the Constellars, yeah, that's kind of expected. Constellar Zubenishimali is a level 5 machine monster with 2100 attack and 1400 defense, and when this card is normal or special summoned, you can add a Constellar monster from your deck to your hand. Hey, we've got another Stratos, just bigger. It's easier to summon under the influence of Sombre's Grave effect, but can also be deployed via Virgo, which thankfully sets up a rank 5 and still gets you that sweet surge. Heck, you can just go ahead and grab that new Caduceus to go even wider and grab that free support card. Granted, it's pretty difficult to use it by itself, but I can't deny that Zuby is absolutely slaying it with those knee-high, high-heel boots. They are serving Xyz material right now. Constellar Antares is a level 6 machine monster with 2400 attack and 900 defense, and when this card is normal or special summoned, you can target a Constellar monster in your grave and add that target to your hand. And boy howdy do we have some good targets. Kaus, Caduceus, and Sombre are all pretty good on repeat viewings, and while I'd rather just have them summoned back to the field, we don't always get what we want. It's about as much recursion as we're gonna get from the grave out of this archetype, at least from our monsters. But at least we get a 6 Scorpion Tail out of it. Thank goodness there's no Frog Constellars. Alright, that's all of our standalone stars. Let's see what happens when they shine together. Constellar Hyades is a rank 3 Beast Warrior Xyz monster with 1900 attack and 1100 defense, requiring 2 level 3 light monsters as material. Once per turn, you can detach an Xyz material from this card to change all monsters your opponent controls to face-up defense position. Ooh, digging the dad bod on this one. Hyades shines a reproachful light upon the battlefield, forcing all but the most linkiest of monsters to adopt their least powerful stance, giving your team a better chance at running over them. Though, if their defense stats are too big, that's not going to help you much. It might have meant something if Hyades was over the 2000 attack mark, but I guess Hidden Arsenal sets can only go so far. But it can still come in handy as a way to bully your opponent. Constellar Omega is a rank 4 Beast Warrior Xyz monster with 2400 attack and 500 defense, requiring 2 level 4 light monsters as material. Once per turn during either player's turn, you can detach an Xyz material from this card, and all Constellar monsters you currently control are unaffected by spell and trap effects this turn. This was a pretty popular option back in the day, even beyond Constellar decks. If you ran level 4 lights, this was a pretty good rank 4 you could go into that wouldn't fold immediately to cards like Compulse or Battle Traps. I know I certainly overlaid a few during my time with Boojins. And in the deck proper, this extends to your entire theme, keeping an established board safe from things like Torrential Tribute. I could even see it being an important card nowadays, as it would block lightning storms, imperms, the whole 9 yards. Being able to block huge swaths of the card pool tool all at once is never going to go out of style, though how effective it will be depends on how entrenched those kind of cards are in the format, to say nothing of how it does nothing against spells and traps that are purely beneficial to your opponent. Honestly though, it feels a little incomplete without the Alpha to go along with the Omega. Could they not have gotten it back from the Vylons? Come on. Constellar Xyz is a rank 4 Machine Xyz monster with 2400 attack and 800 defense, requiring 2 level 4 Constellar monsters as material, so no splashing here. Once per turn during the damage step of either player's turn, when a Constellar monster you control is attacking or being attacked, you can detach an Xyz material from this card, and that monster gains 1000 attack until the end phase. So if you really need to punch something out, this is your go-to monster. Xyz can go up to 3400 on its initial attack, and if your opponent wants to retaliate on their turn, they better make sure that they're at 1000 more points than the Constellar they want to run over. Otherwise, they're gonna be in for a bad time. They've also got a pretty cool brawler design going on, but after looking at it, I saw these two little bee things. Can anyone tell me where these come from? They're bugging the heck out of me. Constellar Pleiades is a rank 5 warrior Xyz monster with 2500 attack and 1500 defense, requiring 2 level 5 light monsters as material. And once per turn, as a quick effect, you can detach a material from this card, then target any card on the field and return it to the hand. That's right, we've got a Compulse on legs here, and it was ferocious. It was almost like an anti-extra deck monster unto itself, because you could bounce back anything that was summoned from there, and not only was it dealt with, so were the materials that were used to make it. And if your opponent didn't end up committing anything in the face of that, well, you can just fire this off during their end phase to push back a freshly set trap, so you don't have to deal with it on your turn. In fact, I'd argue this card is still really good today, with people adding this to their Eldritch extra decks in case they had the opportunity to fold their level 5 light attribute trap monsters into this, which kind of proves that the only thing keeping this off the battlefield today is a lack of good materials to use. Cause if this was running around more often, we'd be pleading for a ban list hit. Constellar Ptolemy M7 is a rank 6 Machine Xyz monster with 2700 attack and 2000 defense, requiring any 2 level 6 monsters as material. But you can also Xyz summon this card by using any Constellar Xyz monster you control as material, other than a copy of this card, transferring all its material over, of course. But if summoned this way, you can't use Ptolemy's effect this turn, kind of like the way Beatrice functions. Why does this keep happening to rank 6s? Anyway, once per turn, you can detach an Xyz material from this card, then target a monster on the field or in either grave and return that target to the hand. Speaking of monsters that still see play to this day, Ptolemy crops up anytime level 6 materials are abundant. While not as oppressive as Pleiades, its wide range to not only bounce on field monsters but grave ones as well means it can be used to pick apart an opponent's board or recover your own resources. And while that's slower to activate if you use its alternative summoning requirements, we do have the ability to field level 6 monsters, allowing you to be a bit more proactive with it. Now, trivia pages might tell you that the M7 in the name is short for Messier 7, the star cluster, but that's actually just a huge coincidence. It's actually an abbreviation of most people's responses to summoning this card. Constellar Ptolemy? Alright, that does it for our monsters. Now it's time for the spells and traps. Constellar Star Cradle is a normal spell card that targets 2 Constellar monsters in your grave and adds those targets to your hand, but you can't conduct your battle phase the turn you activate this card. A pretty harsh drawback, I feel, but could potentially rocket you back into the game. For instance, if those 2 cards are Pollux and Sombra, you can normal summon both, use Sombra's effect to recycle another monster and get another normal summon, and now you have potentially 3 monsters on board that can do a lot of things. True, this kind of effect wouldn't warrant the battle phase loss today, but, you know, that's power creep for you. Look, I'd love to be more compassionate about this, but really, I can't cradle them forever. They're gonna have to grow up eventually. Constellar Twinkle is a normal spell card that targets a Constellar monster you control and increases its level by 1 or 2. And if this card is in your grave, you can banish a Constellar monster from your grave to add this card from the grave to your hand. Now, the recursion effect is once per turn, but the level modulation is not, so you could end up increasing monsters by up to 4 levels with a single copy in one turn. The question is, how worth it do you think it is to run a -1 to smooth out your levels in a deck that already has quite a few ways to accomplish this? True, you could search this off of Caduceus to help it modulate its level, but personally, I'm not convinced. Though cards that can be added back from the grave to the hand do have their own special kind of synergy depending on your other cards. If you ever need a discard outlet, for instance, this is a really good way to polish up that play sequence. You know, because it'll make it twinkle. Constellar Belt is a continuous spell card that keeps the activation of light monster effects from being negated. Discussions will sometimes crop up that certain light decks should run this card as a way to push through negation. Unfortunately, I just don't think it's ever going to make the kind of splash that hopefuls are looking for. First off, while it's nice to have a card that pushes your effects through, it could still be outed very easily like any other kind of continuous card. And as it turns out, the protection it does provide isn't exactly airtight. See, it only prevents the negation of the activation of light monster effects. It doesn't actually keep the effect from being negated. So if a light monster gets hit by, say, Effect Veiler, or there's a skill drain on board, they're still out of luck. Effects like this need to be paired with other effects that actually advance your game plan, with the activation protection being something of a bonus. Multi-roll is actually a great example of this. No one would run that card if all it did was send a card away to the grave to protect your spell activations. They play it for the ability to recur a whole bunch of striker spells at once. Everything else is either a neat tool or the cherry on top. So, I'm sorry to say it, fans, but if you want to win more, you're gonna have to tighten the belt and cut some chaff. Constellar Star Chart is a continuous spell card, and once per turn, when any number of Constellar Xyz Monsters are special summoned to your side of the field, except during the damage step, you can draw a card. This is another one of those continuous draw spells that I'm a little iffy on. The idea seems great. In the case of longer games, you can end up accruing a slew of advantage because of this single card by doing what you normally do. The problem is that it's capped at once per turn, so it's an upstart on turn 1, and you gotta hope you can either special summon more Constellar Xyz on your opponent's turn, which we don't natively have the ability to do, or that it survives until your next turn to trigger it again. And that takes up a slot of a card that you could be playing that would immediately advance your game plan. I'm sorry to say it, but unless you're formatted like Xyz Change Tactics, then you're gonna have to chart out a new path. Constellar Tempest is a continuous spell card, and once per turn during your standby phase, you can target a Constellar Xyz monster you control and a Constellar monster in your grave, and attach that monster from the grave to that Xyz monster as material. And during your end phase, you can target 2 Constellar Xyz monsters you control that have material, detach all material from both Xyz monsters, and if you do, have your opponent's life points. But you can only use that effect once per duel. Sheesh, what an effect! But I'd recommend thinking of that as one of those bonus effects. You have to give up the materials of 2 Xyz monsters to trigger what amounts to Destiny Hero Dogma's effect at probably the least helpful time in the turn, your end phase. You're not able to immediately capitalize on that loss of life points, so your opponent has a turn to respond. The standby phase effect, though, is much more intriguing to me, as it refills you with 1 Xyz material for one of your on-theme Xyz once per turn, and this triggers individually for each Tempest you have active. It's still far too slow to be effective, I fear, but I do understand the appeal of always having another Pleiades or Ptolemy activation. Darn you anime cards, always getting my hopes up. Constellar Meteor is a normal trap card, and during the turn this card is activated, if an opponent's monster battles a Constellar monster, and the opponent's monster is not destroyed, shuffle it into the deck at the end of the damage step. This is kind of hilarious because it turns your whole lineup into better legendary Jujitsu masters, at least for the turn. But depending on the comparison of the 2 monsters, you're probably coming out ahead most times. And who knows, it might not be that bad. It could be you're removing monsters that couldn't be destroyed by battle, or ones that are in defense position that are still too big to deal with. Hey, you hear that, Hyades? We finally found the perfect card to go with you. So it doesn't matter how stacked your opponent's field may be, because yours will always be Meteor. Alright, that's all the Constellar cards, but what do we do with them? Well, we're not exactly kitted out to OTK, but our interaction tools aren't exactly going to stall out most decks, so we're on a mid-range strategy today, chipping away at our opponent with our powerful Xyz toolbox, using our adaptability to close gaps and gain advantage until we draw the path to victory. So what can we play to help them out? Well, we're looking to make as many free Xyz as possible, so to help with that, let's get Galaxy Soldier in here. Not only is it a light for Pleiades, it's also a machine, which means we have access to Cyber Dragon Infinity via Nova, which you all know I'm down for, but you'll be happy for the Omni Negate all the same. What about that Xyz toolbox? Well, we've got everything from Tornado Dragon as quick MSTs, Abyss Dweller to deal with some of the heinous graveyard shenanigans going on in the game right now, Castell to deal with any face-up card without destroying it, Baguska to stall things out, and the grand pappy of them all, Divine Arsenal Zeus, a weapon we can easily run by overlaying for Chalkanine, turning that into Borbo, and going to town. We also can't overstate the importance of a good Vespinato summon if we need our Xyz monsters to push through damage. Plus, the floating effect is kinda spiffy. But what about the Xyz monsters that we're uniquely qualified to make? Starleash Paladynamo needs light monsters to make, can turn anything it targets into a 0-attack vanilla, and draws you a card when your opponent destroys it. But if we can go one material further, we can make number 102 Star Seraph Sentry, which can do something similar 3 times instead of once, or can exchange all their materials for a bit of protection. And since Bujins took a little bit from Constellar, I think it's only right to borrow a bit back with Bujinte Tsukuyomi. The floating effect is outside our range of usability, sure, but discarding 1 to draw 2 was a pretty good deal. Now, we're a light deck, and that means we might want to think about carrying a few copies of Honest just in case. It lets you win any battle, and can deal some serious damage to boot. And if push comes to shove, well, it's a level 4 light monster for all of our Xyz summoning needs. Xyz Import is a pretty good piece of removal that turns a monster smaller than one of our Xyz into its material, and we can actually search it out by way of Astraltopia. Heck, it can even act as an extra material monster if we've already managed to get an Xyz monster on board. And speaking of Astral, we should consider running Astral Karibo. While we can only make number Xyz monsters while it's on the board, our options are pretty good, especially with Baguska, as it can help dissuade destruction from non-monster sources. As for a silly tech pick, how about the Bestials? Yeah, I know everyone's playing this nowadays, but specifically it's here to help us make the newly revealed Chaos Angel Synchro monster from Cyberstorm Access. I mean, it's being released in the same set as the new support, so, why not? Only Kaus has the restriction of not being able to be used for synchro summons, but any of our level 4s and a Bestial make 10. And because, for some reason, Chaos Angel can treat any light or dark monster as a tuner, you're clear to go. Not only do you get the Banish on summon, but you get both extra effects, making it so Chaos Angel is a 3500 attack monster that's unaffected by your opponent's activated monster effects, and keeps all your monsters from being destroyed by battle. And I've gotta say, if a gigantic, powerful synchro being easily accessible in an Xyz-centric deck isn't funny, then I don't know what is. And that's all I have to say about Constellars. They're a very focused set of monsters that draw a lot more power from what extra deck offerings they can access, rather than from their own mechanics. And unfortunately, that's a huge handicap nowadays, where even materials for summon enhance the strategy. If all the Constellars were like Sombre, then we might have something here, but for now, we're just making connections and hoping whatever comes out the other end is good enough. But hey, if people can look up into the inky night sky and draw specific shapes and characters with a random assortment of stars millions of light years away, then maybe, just maybe, we can find that right connection too. But now, I want to hear what you all have to say. Do you agree that Constellars are a few dots of light short of a cluster, or are they able to light up the night sky? Oh, and bonus question, you've been seeing all the zodiac signs this entire video, so let me know your favorite troll. That's right, if there's chaotic webcomic energy in my audience, then I want to let it loose on the entire world! Oh, and make sure to like and subscribe so we can get to Akiza Explained at 50k, and make sure to share this video with someone you know who loves Yu-Gi-Oh! It really does a lot to help me out. Today's video is brought to you by my lovely patrons, including Nebula Navigators 3rd Dynasty, Adam Zajdel, Alexander Kazantzis, Avi Chali, Kane Senpai, Cameron Berg, Chibi Gohan, Eric, Frankie, Genesis Yu-Gi-Oh!, Gloomba331, Great Big Pillock, Hairbear, Harry the Ominous Benefactor, Howling Zangetsu, Ironic, John Manji, Julius Sneezer, Larakia, Mana Charge, Marluxia is a Girl, Meteornus, Michael Madsen, Mighty Action X, Panther J, Rebel King Lucifer, Rem T Bright, RJ the Jank Monarch, Ruxith Sarani, Sophie, apparently, the Charizard Flame, the Fresh Prince of Conair, the Wizard Moose and Xander Wolfensberger, Cosmic Crusaders Ariel Kersey, Bear Sharktopus Studios, Chaz Ghost, Chris Kessler, Corbinisms, Danny Bound, Emily, Eva Padilla, Herbal D, Jesus Garcia, Kale the Dragon, Carp, King Scarlet Yu-Gi-Oh!, Lord Whoop-De-Doo, Manga Pages, Marion James E. Picata, Matt Simmons, Neo Trinity 7, Nitromo, Sarah Lo Sulci, Shooting Star 3300, Star-Lord 777, Super Purd, Tucker Ordorn and the legendary Raven, as well as the wonderful Starlight Explorers you see on screen now. I'm only able to continue doing this thanks to the support of these lovely people, so if you'd like to be a part of these credits, help me in my journey to cover all of Yu-Gi-Oh's archetypes, and get all my videos just a little bit early, please check out my YouTube membership or Patreon links in the description to see if I have anything you'd like on offer. And if you'd like to see another video about an Xyz focused light deck, check out this video I made covering Boojins. And if you want to see two Yu-Gi tubers going at it, check out Noah Jenk and I's latest series, Progression Polls, where your voice shapes the format. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.